Senator Holmes says foreigners are driving up the price of farms beyond the reach of family farmers, and foreign investors could gain control over the agricultural production of the United States and Alabama. He's also worried that foreign absentee landlords would let the land become idle. According to Holmes, foreign owners couldn't possibly have as much interest in the community as local residents. He points out that more than half the states already restrict alien ownership of agricultural land, and even communist and socialist states generally ban foreign ownership of land. Holmes says his bill includes certain exemptions, but also prescribes penalties for violations of the bill's provisions. The bill won't discourage industries who could enhance the state's development, productivity, and tax base.
My bill is aimed at foreign land speculators who simply want to squirrel up away in the capital in Alabama by buying up Alabama farm land, to take advantage of tax laws, to drive up prices, to reap windfall profits on paper transactions, while the land lies fallow and the price of land goes out of the Alabama farm family's reach.
Over in the House, Representative Bob McKee is also concerned about foreign industries owning Alabama land. His bill dealing with foreign investments is currently before a House Judiciary Subcommittee. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News at the state capitol.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
The meeting was originally supposed to be closed with a news conference to follow, but Mayor Fulmer insisted that newsmen be allowed inside.
Would you like to have gentlemen of the press present?
I will not be a party. I'll not be a party to it if they're not. This is public business, and it affects the Montgomery area, and if they can't come in, I'm leaving.
Certainly. No.
So the press was invited in. The mayor did not leave, and the meeting started. Eastern's Director of Governmental Affairs, Dick Burdett, told the group what TV 12 News first reported Sunday, that Eastern plans to suspend its Montgomery routes effective June 1st, pending approval of the Civil Aeronautics Board. Burdett says the cost of flying short-haul routes like Montgomery to Atlanta has simply become too expensive. He says the Montgomery route is only marginally profitable, and Eastern expects it to become even less profitable during the next few years. Despite the fact that the term suspension does have connotations of being temporary, Burdett expressed doubt that Eastern will ever return to Danley Field.
I would, to be very honest and candid with you, I don't think that we have, well, I know at this time we do not have plans to reinstitute service at any given time in the future.
The battle lines are drawn. Eastern says it will file its petition with the CAB sometime this week. Mayor Fulmer says he will do everything he can to keep Eastern in Montgomery. And Monday, the Montgomery Airport Authority will meet to ask its board for permission to hire a Washington legal firm to argue its case before the Civil Aeronautics Board. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News, Danley Field.
The governor's proposed $1.37 billion education and $298 million general fund budgets were introduced in the House by Representative Walter Owens of Centerville and in the Senate by Senator J. Richmond Pearson of Birmingham. The bill introduced for education spending next year is a little different from the earlier working draft. For one thing, the proposal includes a plan for capital outlay that Finance Director John Papanasta says will be distributed to the schools based on need. The $20 million for the capital outlay would come from the minimum program. A companion measure to the budget, also introduced today, would allow $25 million from the state insurance fund to be transferred to the troubled state Medicaid program. Another part of the budget would then pay back $12.5 million to the state insurance fund out of education money. Several other Medicaid transfer bills were also introduced today. One by Representative Nolan Williams of Newton did not include a method to pay the money back to the insurance fund. Another plan called for a package of tax bills earmarked for Medicaid. A similar package is already stalled in a House committee. Both would raise taxes on cigarettes and beer. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The Falcons, though one of the smaller schools in town, have that rare blend of talent and cohesiveness that wins basketball games. They are now 25-0, the last 7 wins in tournament competition that has carried them to the junior high championship game this Saturday night on their home court. Their big man in the middle is Marvin Humphreys, a 6'2" all-around athlete averaging 21 points a game, MVP in the county and area tournaments. Redigo Long averages 18 points a game, an all-tournament player too. Rick Yates, 15 points a game, a very steady player and also an all-star. Kenny Smith scores 12 points a game, but is valuable in the Falcons' pressing game with his quickness. Marquette Shepard is the point man who shares playing time with Kim McKissick. Coach Stan Edwards describes his team's style of play.
Well, primarily we're a fast break team. We like to press and try to capitalize on the press and get the ball off the board on the fast break.
Who are the guys who are the keys in the press for you?
Well, of course, Marvin Humphreys is our leading rebounder. He's averaging about 15 rebounds a game. And Rick Yates and Ready Go Long, Kenny Smith, all help out with our rebounding.
These guys look very coachable. They look like they're a pleasure to work with.
Well, like I've told everybody, talent does help, and we've got a good group of boys this year.
Auburn should well remember Robert Scott's shooting accuracy the night of January 23rd. The Alabama senior led all scorers with 15 points and made this crucial free throw that forced the game into overtime and eventually resulted in an Alabama victory. Revenge has to be on the Tigers' mind tonight. Since that loss, Auburn has been on the downhill side of a roller coaster ride, scoring just one victory and losing 7 games. And while pride is a factor in tonight's contest, championships are not at stake. Both teams have no hope of a Southeastern Conference title. What is at stake is momentum. With a 10-6 record, the Tide needs to secure a top seed in the conference tournament. Auburn stands 5-11 and just needs to regain the confidence that comes with winning. Auburn has not defeated Alabama since 1975. That is a long drought. And you would think at least the percentages of luck should be on the Tigers' side this evening, but then luck has very little to do with winning basketball games. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports.
The Tigers surprised some people in the first half. Auburn played good basketball, hitting close to 50% of its shots. The Tigers even grabbed some offensive rebounds. While Auburn was hitting, Alabama was missing. The Tide was cold with a capital C. Alabama hit just 28% of its shots. But despite that wide disparity in shot percentages, Auburn only led by 6 at the half, 30-24. The teams just reversed roles in the second period. Auburn's shots that cut nylon in the first half fell harmlessly off the rim. The game got physical. Auburn sent Alabama to the line numerous times, and the Tide cashed in. Auburn won the first half, but Alabama won the second half, and that's the one that counts. Alabama defeats Auburn 59-47. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports in Tuscaloosa.
After an early season injury, a broken bone in his foot, and a trade to the New York Yankees, Oscar was the hottest hitter on the Yankee roster in the final 6 weeks of the season. It was last October that the injury jinx raised its ugly head again. Oscar and some friends were playing a pickup basketball game here in his backyard. He suffered a shoulder separation. The Yankees were later notified. Oscar was examined by the club's doctors, and all feel he's 100% recovered and ready to go.
Oscar, you played any basketball lately?
Well, no, after I broke my collarbone, I decided to give it up.
There was several things in the paper about that the Yankees didn't know about it for a few days. Just what was the general story there?
Well, when I first did it, I didn't report it to the Yankees, and I talked to my lawyer, and we called him up and told him I had broke my collarbone.
What did they do?
Well, they told me to come up there, and they wanted the doctor to look at it. So I went up there, and, the guy here, Vaughn, he had set it, and it was set right, so, I didn't have no problem on it.
How is it now?
It's doing fine. I've been lifting weights on it, and it feels good.
Mm-hmm. How about the foot? You broke the bone in your foot last year during the season. How is that?
Well, the foot has been doing good. I broke that in May of last year, and I came back last year, and, I hit the ball good the second half, and I didn't have no trouble at it.
The last 6 weeks of the season, you were about the hottest thing on the roster, weren't you?
Well, yes, when I got traded to the Yankees, I think I hit 390 over there, so, I didn't have no trouble with my foot, and I played some left field.
Do you have any idea how the Yankees are going to use you this year?
Well, right now I think me and Pannell are going to play left field, and, I got to wait and see when I get to spring training, see how strong my shoulder is, and, they got Mercer, and I saw in a book where Mercer and Pinella might play left, and I might be the DH.
You have to read about this in the papers and stuff.
I have to read about it because, you know, ain't nobody called me up and said that I was going to be the left fielder, I was going to be the DH, so I got to wait till we get to spring training to find out.
You've pretty well acclimated to that type of thing where you don't play every day, huh?
Well, yes, I think they got, they got used to me platooning, so now that, it's hard for me to get an everyday job. Like if I, start off and if I don't start off killing the ball against left-handers, they won't give me a shot to play against left-handers.
They got the good right-handed power hitter Watson in the free agent deal. How do you think that's going to help?
Well, that's going to help. The death of Thurman Munson last year left us with a, almost all-power left-hand hitting lineup, and Watson going to add points from the right side. Well, right now I think me and Pinella going to play left field, and I got to wait and see when I get to spring training, see how strong my shoulder is, and they got Mercer, and I saw in a book where Mercer and Pinella might play left, and I might be the DH.
You have to read about this in the papers and stuff.
I have to read about it because, ain't nobody called me up and said that I was going to be the left fielder, I was going to be the DH, so I got to wait till we get to spring training to find out.
You've pretty well acclimated to that type of thing where you don't play every day, huh?
Well, yes, I think they got, they got used to me platooning, so now that, it's hard for me to get an everyday job. Like if I, start off and if I don't start off killing the ball against left-handers, they won't give me a shot to play against left-handers.
They got the good right-handed power hitter Watson in the free agent deal. How do you think that's going to help?
Well, that's going to help. The death of Thurman Munson last year left us with a, almost all-power left-hand hitting lineup, and Watson going to add points from the right side.
If you're looking for a house, it's generally a good idea to shift the burden of finding it onto the shoulders of more than one broker. In the Montgomery area, the majority of houses are sold through multiple listing. The listing agent is under contract with the seller and represents his interest. However, if you work with a broker or agent, then you can expect that his obligation, even though you have no contract with him, is to find the best house for you. Stay with brokers who get most of their business by referral rather than high-powered promotion. And it's good, too, if you know someone who knows a broker, and that little personal contact sometimes will get you extra consideration. When you're looking for a house, here are some things you should definitely consider. Is the area you're looking at close enough to your work? Convenient to shopping? Does it provide the right schools and churches? Is it in a neighborhood that's stable and developing rather than declining? Always consider your chances for resale from the standpoint of both the price, the neighborhood, and the length of time you might live there. Now, this sounds elementary, but it's very important. Buyers buy houses on an emotional basis, so try to restrain yourself. Go back to re-inspect the property several times. Each time you'll notice things you didn't see before. You're buying as is, so be sure you know what you're buying. Also, try to make your own decision about the house without bringing in a non-professional for advice, like Aunt Sally or anyone else who might not know your needs or the property. Ask someone who's involved in real estate. Another thing, look at your budget. Can you really afford to buy this house? Remember, total housing expense means more than just payment of principal, interest, and taxes. Finally, you might be happy to know that this is a good time of year to buy a house, price-wise. In the spring, houses go on at their highest price, and generally in the fall to midwinter, you can make your best deal. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that houses may be just a little bit picked over by wintertime. This is Coping, and I'm Ivy Berman.
You may think that all it takes to be a firefighter is a desire to fight blazes, eat your own cooking, and slide down a brass pole. However, it takes more than that to get the job. Specifically, 8 weeks of training at the Montgomery Fire Academy. The modern firefighter faces more hazards than his predecessors.
Everything today is so far advanced as far as the ordinary house. When you enter in it, in a fire, you don't know what's in there, and with all the plastics and the different chemicals that they make nowadays, it's important that a fireman knows what those chemicals are and what the hazards are when you're fighting. And some of them are so lethal that just one quick breath means instant death. And that's what we're trying to avoid here.
So training is far from easy, stressing more than just the ability to pick up a hose and spray water at a blaze. Of course, there is rigorous physical training. However, there is a greater emphasis on classroom training. There are weekly written tests covering material in nearly 40 different manuals, and practical tests, such as rappelling, to ensure that a firefighter can do the job and do it correctly without endangering his or another person's life. The biggest test may well be the practice burn. It's held at Maxwell Air Force Base, and recruits must demonstrate the knowledge and ability to control and extinguish a blaze safely.
The men need to learn the different stages of fire, how fire does progress from a incipient stage, is what we call it, on into a free-burning fire and sometimes a raging fire.
The reward? Receiving certification of your accomplishment. 21-year-old Charlie Davis of Montgomery.
There's a whole lot to learn. I mean, each day you learn something new. The learning never stops.
Firefighters, trained to save lives and property in the most efficient and safest way possible. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News. Firefighter training involves physical strength, mental ability, and money. According to Sergeant Roy Campbell of the Montgomery Fire Department, when a new firefighter joins the department, it costs the city roughly $1,000 to outfit him. Sergeant Campbell says it wasn't that long ago that new members of the department had to pay for the training and supplies themselves. Recruits aren't the only expense for the city's firefighters. Equipment is a major expenditure. Pumper trucks run over $100,000, aerial ladder trucks $180,000. We compared this year's budget with 1970s. In 1980, it'll take more than twice as much money to provide fire protection as it did 10 years ago. Fire stations and manpower over the decade have stayed pretty stable. Sergeant Campbell notes one reason for the higher costs is technology. These scenes were taken February 7, 1967, the night of Dale's penthouse fire in Montgomery. 25 people died on the top floor because there were no fire escapes. That fire tragically brought to light the need for better prevention, with manpower, equipment, building codes, and inspections. Even with those improvements, fires still break out, and it's a special person that fire officials look for.
He has to have the physical capabilities of becoming a firefighter, and he also has to be able to recognize, danger when he sees it, and take all the safety precautions that's necessary, to be a firefighter.
Although training, money, and trained firefighters make up the city's fire department, if the public did more to prevent blazes, firefighters wouldn't have to put their lives on the line as often. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
Respond to your questions. Otherwise, what I would like to do is to give you a copy. I believe you're
in Montgomery. I'm supporting the president because nominated not just in a
campaign is to get the congressional committees to go to work. I feel sure that you recognize most of these individuals when you the Mondale team for this congressional district.
March organizers have planned the event for Tuesday, March 18th at noon, and its supporters expect around 1,000 participants. According to Bill Edwards, director of the Alabama Coalition Against Hunger, the march is an attempt to focus the legislature's attention on the real human problems in Alabama, namely the proposed cutbacks in Medicaid and welfare programs. Edwards charges that the governor's proposed solution to funding the Medicaid program is only a temporary Band-Aid approach and shows no commitment to the future of the program. However, the governor's press secretary, John Hamm, disagrees with some of Edwards' statements. He says that although the general fund portion of the budget will decrease, that decrease has been more than made up for by the growth of earmarked taxes, which should result in an increase of some $2 million in state funds. Sidney Kohara, WSFA TV News at the state capitol.
Rayner says the Highway Department has done more than any other state agency in cutting costs, reducing its staff by 26%, parking 1,000 state vehicles, and decreasing gasoline usage by 150,000 gallons. He says his department has seen a 16% yearly inflation rate for the past 3 years, and he says the state owes $558 million, money borrowed to improve Alabama highways between 1951 and 1971. In spite of this, he says the Federal Highway Administration has already notified him that Alabama's maintenance program isn't good enough. and if some money isn't found, the state will lose future federal dollars. Rayner says the governor's proposed 5% state tax on gasoline will go a long way toward getting Alabama and its highways out of trouble. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Several members of the House challenged the dog track bill, even though it's a courtesy not to become involved in someone's local legislation. Representative Shelby Ward of Opelika says she's opposed to the track on moral grounds because of the harm it could do the community. Still others, like Representative Bob McKee of Montgomery, question the local nature of the bill. McKee believes the track will affect the 5 or 6 counties surrounding Macon County. State Representative Thomas Reed explained to the House that he wants the citizens of Macon County to have a chance to vote on the bill. Reed fought successfully against several attempts to carry it over. The final vote was 26 yes and 21 no. According to the official record of the vote, as it now stands, Representative Reed failed to vote on the issue either way. The bill now goes to the governor for his signature, but James says he will neither veto nor sign the bill, thus allowing it to become law.
I certainly won't sign it. I doubt if I veto it. What I'll probably do is go over to Macon County and help the good people of Macon County give it the sound thrashing that it so richly deserves.
A county referendum could be held as early as the first week in April. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
All right, Senator St. John moves that the reading of the bill and link be dispensed with. All in favor indicate so by saying aye. Or later today. Is there an objection or are there objections? Seeing no objections, all senators and all. All right, gentlemen, are there objections to the rules being suspended? District 18. To require the contracts entered into by the state of Alabama.
I think I've offered some solutions to Medicaid, and I'd like to be able to follow through, and hopefully the legislature will follow through, and let's see if we can't find a sensible solution. We Bessie, want to follow through on these recommendations that I have made, and we may need to look at some federal court action ourselves. Like suing on behalf of the taxpayers of Alabama and the Medicaid recipients of Alabama to put these programs in.
WSFA TV 12 Montgomery.
From Alabama's News Center, the WSFA TV News 12 o'clock report. Ivy Berman with news, Dan Atkinson with weather, and Karen Scott with people and places.
Good afternoon. In about 15 minutes, Governor Bob James will be holding a news conference, and the news conference at that time is going to be a major announcement. Although no one in the governor's office will confirm it, reliable sources have indicated to us that the governor plans to have a new finance director for the state. We've also been told that the man Governor James has chosen to take over as finance director is Sid McDonald of ARAB. Our sources indicate that McDonald's been offered the post, but had not given Governor James his answer until last night. McDonald and his wife Ann went to the James home here in Montgomery last night for dinner. It was then, according to our sources, that Sid McDonald formally agreed to take over as Alabama's finance director. He'll officially take over next Thursday. After dinner, both McDonald and his wife spent the night at the governor's mansion, and McDonald went over to the Capitol about mid-morning for the news conference that's scheduled in a few minutes. Sid McDonald is 41 years old and a native of Alabama. He's the president of Brindley Mountain Telephone Company and is heavily involved in real estate development in the Arab area. He's the owner of a shopping center there as well. McDonald has had a long history in Alabama politics and is a graduate of the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. He has a degree in history. From 1967 to 1975, he served in the Alabama House as a legislator and was elected to one term as state senator in 1975, serving 4 years in that capacity. Then in 1978, McDonald waged an unsuccessful campaign for governor. Although he did not win the Democratic primary that year, he did much better than most had expected. Interestingly, while his 1978 campaign was aimed largely at AEA, he, like Governor James, is a very strong advocate of not earmarking tax dollars in advance. Also interesting, it's the first time in Alabama's history that a governor has appointed someone who ran against him to a cabinet post. The big questions now remain as to the futures of Dr. David Bronner and John Papanastis. It's been indicated to us that Dr. Bronner will continue to head up the state employees' retirement system. John Papanastis is expected to stay on for several weeks to work with McDonnell. His plans beyond that time are not yet firm. Papanastis has been finance director since a court order forced the governor to move Dr. Bronner out of the job. We're expecting that formal announcement of Sid McDonald's appointment as the state's new finance director in about 10 minutes. And we'll be going to the Capitol live when that happens.
To the imagination for that.
We're now going to the Capitol for the formal announcement of the new finance director.
With the open meetings posture of this administration, everything is open now. The sun shines in. I want to say it's going to continue to be like that. Some month, 6 weeks ago, John Papanastis told me that he had been with the state of Alabama government for some 6 years and wanted to go into private law practice. He said he would stay with us through the early part of the session, but wanted to make this change as soon as he could. You know, John was married here a week or 10 days ago, and I think he is interested in a thing called income, increasing his income. So, this being the case, I don't have to tell you the good job outstanding job, in my judgment, that Mr. Papanastis has done over as finance director, as Dr. Bronner did before him, holding down 2 jobs for a while. But nevertheless, it became necessary that we look for someone to take over that office, which is essential and as important as any function within the executive branch of government. As you know, we are very keenly interested in developing the Department of Finance to where it is truly a budgetary and cost control operation. I might say that, as I have told you before, last year we were able to cut the cost of operations down here some $50 million, and we think that is just the tip of the iceberg, but so much of it depends on the operational efficiency of the finance department. So, to make a long story short, in looking for a person that we thought had the expertise and no question the integrity, and from what he told me, he has run for public office on occasion or two and knows where the capital is. Mr. Sid McDonald, Senator Sid McDonald, consented to come down and provide the service. We're delighted and we are grateful, and it's no question in my mind that the Senator will make a tremendous contribution to the goals we are attempting to accomplish. So, Senator goes to work Thursday morning.
Thank you, Governor. I would first express my appreciation for the honor that's implied in this appointment and the challenge that it presents to me. I do not have detailed outlines and goals at this time as to what I shall do as finance director, but briefly, I recognize clearly I shall first try to continue the very efficient operation that I observe now of the department, and to continue the department's efforts to bring about the economies that you and the department have started in your term, bring about savings and efficiency in all segments of the state government. Overriding almost everything, I think, is the finance director's role to work with the governor and the legislature in recognizing the obvious and very sincere financial crisis that this state now faces. It might not be an exaggeration to say that in all relative terms, Alabama may have the most severe financial crisis of any state in the country. It is for the executive branch, it is for the finance director and the governor to constantly propose to the legislature the means, the alternatives, the different solutions that might be available to solve this very dangerous and harmful crisis. I will do that with the governor as perhaps the first priority.
Well, that's Sid McDonald, the state's new finance director. The announcement was just made live at the Capitol by Governor Fob James. And of course, we'll have a complete wrap-up on that tonight at 6 o'clock. Time for our weather now with Dan Atkinson. And Dan, I could hear the storms all night last particular area.
I assume you're talking in the broader context and not with regard to the house. Pure military standpoint in registration, there's no real great need for registration. We have not had a strategy of mutual assured destruction. That strategy occurred. If we had to expand, what's important is that people of the world know that we have vital interests around the world, to include Southwest Asia, that we have a substantial capability, a capability that's better than many people think. It's not as good as I would like to see it, but better than many people think. And we have a capability, and we have the resolve, and we have the will to do what's necessary. And it's my conviction that if we demonstrate that to the world, that we do have the capability and we have the will, that we'll be able to prevent an open conflict.
FBI agents say the Delcher Moving and Storage Company of Phoenix City allegedly overcharged military personnel when it came to moving their household goods. Most of those personnel were stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia. According to Special Agent Edwin Enright, Kenneth Bragg, the company's owner, his brother Carol, former Secretary Joyce Ann Kaser, and Roy Carson Fugate handled the operation from the Phoenix City end. The fifth person indicted, Anthony Wentworth Bethea, was employed at the household section of the Transportation Division at the military installation. The 7-count indictment charges the 5 with inflating the weight of goods stored and shipped, also charging for unnecessary storage, packing materials never used, and other services allegedly never performed. In an afternoon hearing before U.S. Magistrate John Denson, bond was set at $25,000 each, with a formal arraignment before federal judge Robert Varner scheduled for February 28th in Montgomery. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News, Opelika. In an afternoon hearing, Kenneth Bragg, his brother Carol, Roy Carson Fugate, Joyce Ann Kaser, and Anthony Wentworth Bethea were arraigned before U.S. Magistrate John Denson. Those named in the 7-count indictment allegedly charged for unnecessary storage, packing materials never used, services never performed, and inflating the weight of goods shipped or stored. 4 of the 5 worked at Bragg's Delcher Moving and Storage Company in Phoenix City. The other person indicted, Anthony Bethea, worked in the household section of the Transportation Division at Fort Benning, Georgia. Those believed to be taken were military personnel at the Georgia facility. Bond for the 5 was set at $25,000 each, with a formal hearing set for February 28th before U.S. Judge Robert Varner in Montgomery. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News, Opelika.
State School Superintendent Dr. Wayne Teague told Board of Education members that he wants to restructure the state's education department to provide for more accountability in a state budget that's already 30% smaller than this year's. Teague told the board that he could efficiently reduce the staff by 100 or more people, a savings of about $2 million a year. Teague says the proposed staff reductions would take effect March 1st, 1981. Some board members had reservations about the reorganization plan, and action was delayed until a future meeting. The board did endorse 2 resolutions proposed by Teague that provide for state board review procedures over local school systems. These review procedures would include a proposed standard reporting system for local school finances. And Governor James had some proposals of his own, among them changing education to a central service of government. A majority of James's proposals depend on bills in the legislature that would repeal some education statutes and transfer the authority to the Board of Education. The governor's proposals were also met with some questions by board members who will consider them further at their next meeting. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
The commission decision says no new students should be accepted at Athens College this fall, and the school returned to the Methodist Church by fall of 1981. The reason? Well, there were several. According to the staff report presented by AIC Executive Director John Porter, course duplication exists in the area around Athens, resulting in inefficient and wasteful spending. The staff report says the cost per student at Athens College is high and enrollment is low. Athens President Dr. Harvey Sandridge told the commission he didn't believe the school would be closed. And a representative of the State Board of Education says the board will oppose the commission's plan. Implementation of the AIC recommendation would take an act of the state legislature. In other action, the commission recommended a change in the role of Livingston University to include more two-year courses. Here, too, the commission staff says cost per student is high, and this is one way to lower that cost. AIC officials made it clear that their recommendation does not include the closing of Livingston University. The commission also approved some off-campus courses for the University of Alabama in Huntsville, the University of Alabama, and Auburn University at Montgomery. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
The governor made the announcement at about 12:15 at the state capitol in a news conference that had been called earlier this morning. But the actual agreement between the governor and McDonald came last night. The former senator and his wife Ann had dinner with the governor and Mrs. James at the James residence, then spent the night at the mansion. The final details of the agreement were worked out at the governor's home. Up until then, McDonald still had reservations about accepting the position which had been offered not too long ago by the governor. But during the evening, the two men worked out the problems and McDonald agreed to take over the finance director's job. Today, former, present, and future finance directors stood at the front of James's office as the governor expressed confidence in a man who ran against him in 1978.
And it's no question in my mind that the senator will make a tremendous contribution to the goals we are attempting to accomplish.
McDonald will be taking over the duties of John Papanastis, who's entering a private law practice. McDonald was questioned about the role of Dr. David Bronner, who once served as finance director and now serves as the financial advisor to the governor.
He will continue to be recognized as an expert on the state's fiscal affairs. I will call on him, as I will often need to, for advice to my department, as I understand the governor will. I will be the finance director.
McDonald says he plans to spend a couple of weeks familiarizing himself with the governor's budget, legislative bills, and the administration's goal of streamlining state expenditures. Incidentally, the appointment of McDonald, a 12-year veteran of state legislature, is a significant reversal of form for Governor James. During his first year in office, the governor had not brought anyone into the administration who had legislative or political experience. And at least one source tells us that we can expect more appointments like today's at the cabinet and sub-cabinet levels in the months ahead. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the governor's office.
The bad news is that consumer prices in January were up almost 1.5%. That, by the way, is the biggest jump in more than 6.5 years. The big villains were gasoline and heating oil. The reason for the big jump in gas is that the effect of the recent price hike on crude oil by the OPEC nations is just being felt at the gas pumps. Housing prices jumped almost 1.5%, primarily because of the higher fuel costs and higher mortgage rates. Medical costs were also up again, about 1/3%, because of New Year price adjustments at hospitals and in doctor fees. The good news in January is that the price of food didn't go up as much as in previous months. In January, it was only up 0.1%. And more good news. In February, the price of food is actually down over a full percentage point. But with fuel prices up more than 50% last year and overall farm production costs still rising, that situation won't last, and food will probably start back up in March. Some good buys while prices are down this month are produce. It's down 2.5% in February. Poultry, which is down about 1%, and dairy and pork, which were also down slightly. The price of meat was generally a little higher this month, but with prices for all farm products projected to start up again next month at a pretty good clip, the grocery store is still the best place to spend your money. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.